In today's video, I'm going to talk about a name that can truly move watches. But that name is not Rolex, it's not Breitling, it's not Tudor. The name is Bond, James Bond. And very few people in the world can sell a watch the way Bond can and the Bond franchise can. Watches have always been intrinsically associated with the Bond franchise from its outset. Of course, Bond's creator and novelist, Ian Fleming, was an avid Rolex Explorer fan and wearer himself. He was part of that generation that was fascinated by the ascent of Everest by Sir Edmund Hillary, who was wearing, of course, a prototype of what would become, the year later in 1954, the Rolex Explorer. Now, those early Bond films featured a Submariner, which I believe was the watch owned by Sean Connery himself, very compatible with the character, very compatible with the active needs of Bond to be at home in any element, including the sea, right? In 1995, we started seeing the emerging partnership with Omega. This originated simply as a costume decision by the costume designer at the time, Lindy Hemming, who thought that an Omega Seamaster 300 meters would look great on Bond's wrist and would be reasonable for the character would wear, and I'd be inclined to agree. So Omega gifted the watches, they wore them, and it wasn't until later and really into the era of Daniel Craig that this became more of a formal partnership where Omega essentially pays Eon to advertise new watches in their films. They introduce new lines of watches around the 007 brand, and this has been a fruitful partnership in both directions, right? So what I thought I'd explore today is this reasonable? Does this choice make sense? And what would MI6 issue Bond today if they were to give him a wristwatch? And what functions would that watch need to serve? What would those considerations be? So with no further ado, I will click over to my little slideshow here. So my basic assumptions are that MI6 issues the watch, right? And the watch, so it's not going to be a watch that Bond goes out and buys in the store by himself or decides to wear. It's going to be something that Q Branch hands him, right? And that he presumably has to give back to Q Branch when the mission's over. Of course, his track record with giving back Q Branch's property is spotty at best. Right, the watch also must obviously be field capable. It's got to be able to take a knock. It's got to be able to go in the water. It's got to be able to take extreme temperatures. It probably needs some sort of electromagnetic shielding, right? And it's got to be able to take blunt trauma because Bond has that use his tools ethos. He takes stuff through the paces and he has absolutely no qualms in destroying whatever Q Branch gives him, right? It also has to have modification potential. So there's got to be a case that can be opened. There has to be the potential to add some more functionality to the extent launch. Of course, the Omega and Eon partnership, they yielded some pretty spectacular examples of that. You get everything from lasers to electromagnetic pulses to what have you. So that needs to happen. It's obviously very cool for everyone who watches these films, right? So there are also tactical considerations, and the watch can absolutely, under no circumstances, reveal the fact that Bond is a British operative. It can't even reveal a military history, even though Bond was Commander Bond, right? He was an SAS officer. So that can't happen. It can't give him away. So anything that's currently issued by the Royal Navy is just out, full stop. Anything even with, I would say, a NATO strap should be rejected out of hand, right? Because it's too associated with that military context. And Bond already seems, if he's not in a tuxedo, like someone who could have served in the military, because indeed he did. So the watch must be not give away his position. It's going to be silent, essentially. It can't be highly reflective. Any highly reflective or high polished materials might look good, in a lounge at dinner, but it wouldn't do him any favors if it slips out from beneath his jacket sleeve in the middle of an operation. Additionally, it has to be practical. It has to be legible. He can't very well have a Gigi-Lecoultre reverso on his wrist, right? He wouldn't be able to read it at a glance. So it has to be of a reasonable size as well, right? It's got to go under his cuff, but it also has to be visible at a glance, right? So finally, Bond isn't just a field agent. He also does tactical infiltration where he has to, muck it up with high society. So because he's in these black tie scenarios, he needs to blend in amongst the elite. You want something specifically which a bouncer or a guard or, someone not in the know wouldn't necessarily recognize as a nice watch. But a billionaire or someone with, some high breeding and status would recognize as, hey, that's actually quite a nice watch. It makes complete sense that whatever Bond's cover does in the world, he usually plays affluent characters in these infiltration missions, would own that sort of a watch, right? So character consistency. Finally, Bond has to agree to wear the watch. This is perhaps the lowest consideration. It's a big consideration with viewers of films. It has to look consistent with the Bond brand, but Bond essentially uses whatever he's given. So I would put this lowest on the pecking order of considerations. He's not a sentimental guy. The watch is a tool. He would be happy throwing it into the ocean. He casts Aston Martins into the ocean all the time. Not a sentimental guy. He's pragmatic, but he does have taste. He likes a sober, classy, refined look. He's a style icon, right? And so with that all in mind, I would like to present the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe. I think this is the perfect watch for Bond. The Bathyscaphe was the civilian version, crucially, of the original 50 Fathoms, which was issued to the Nageurs de Combat, the military swimmers in France. So it has military credibility, but it's not specifically a military model, and there's no markings on the case on the Bathyscaphe that could give him away as a military operative, right? Additionally, this chronometer version of the watch, you could build in some nice functionalities with QBratch, right? I can imagine heaps of gadgets, GPS, lasers. Those buttons could, launch him out of his Aston Martin, anything like that. It's also quite a sober-looking watch. It's not particularly reflective. It doesn't catch a lot of attention. It could work well in a high-status environment as well as in a tactical field operative environment, right? It's a highly versatile piece, and it's very sober and doesn't catch your eye. If you were to see this and not be a watch geek, you would think, gee, that guy has a nice watch. You wouldn't necessarily pick up that it's a Blancpain. You wouldn't necessarily recognize or remember the watch afterwards. It's not as recognizable as a Submariner, right? So it's something that a billionaire would notice, but your average, lambda individual wouldn't necessarily. And now let's compare that to the last emblematic watch that we saw in No Time to Die, right? This Omega Seamaster 300 meters special edition coaxial 007. Let's forget for a second that the markings on the back, that would be a dead giveaway that it's from the 00 branch of MI6, right? So first of all, there's faux antiquing of patina on this dial. I find it difficult to believe that Bond would go for a faux vintage look, or for that matter, MI6 would. There's no need to give false patina to anything that Bond wears because it's going to accumulate patina quite quickly, right? Additionally, that arrow on the dial indicates that this is issued by the British government and is the property of the British government, must be returned to the British government. Bond would never have that dial. If he were to have the on dial, it would immediately give him away as a British operative, right? And that bracelet is absolutely gorgeous. I would love to own it, but it's highly reflective. It's going to give away his position in a tactical situation. And I just don't think he would wear it necessarily compared to this Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe, which is also gorgeous. So it doesn't matter what I think. Tell me what you think. I want to hear it in the comments. I want to hear if you thought I got it right, or if you think that James Bond is quite happy to wear Omega, and at this point, we're fine with it. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Beard and Loathing.